Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Great turnout. My name's Tom Borishevich. I'm at the library. This evening, we've got Renee Fleury, who has 15 years of experience researching the stone caves. You guys are all excited to hear about. Going to tell us about their significance historically and
astronomically, and folklore, and a little bit of all of it.
So, I'm sure you would want to hear her. So, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to, well, it'd be better if I had the title of the thing up on the screen. What? Maybe it needs to be turned back on. Ah, well. There we go. Now it's working. Okay. Yes. So, welcome to the Stone Chambers, portals to resonance, healing, and folklore. I am your host, Madame Datora. Well, I'm sorry, this is Madrid's Deadly Darlings. I am your host, Renee J. Fleury, known by my alter ego name in most of my other talks, Madame Datora. So, you're here, though, for the Stone Chambers, not to hear about poisonous plants. So, here are the many questions. And I'm going to dive into a little bit of all of this. Who built them? How old are they? Why were they built? How were they built? And what can their folklore tell us? The thing with these questions is that, nobody really knows for sure. Some people will claim that they do, and I give them a lot of credit for their many devoted years of research. I think that there's a little bit or a lot of bit of truth in all of it. But they are an enigmatic presence. They have nothing but questions. Just when you think that you've come to what could be a conclusion, aha, that's it. That's definitely who built them and why. Like 6 more questions pop up and you'll never get to the bottom of this. There are over 200 chambers in Putnam County, New York alone. And dozens more in Westchester, Rockland, Dutchess, and many more in the New England states. There are some in Connecticut, especially out in the Mystic area in Groton, Connecticut. The area is called Gunjiwamp. And I've heard that there are some in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and somebody even told me that there was one in California. That's pretty far removed, so we're not going to talk about California because it is, in fact, its own country, all the way on the other side of this one. Sorry if you're from California, it's just a different vibe. So, hypotheses on their origins or and age are as varied as they are numerous. They could be root cellars, they could be ancient Celtic temples, they could be built by the indigenous, my ancestors, as sweat lodges. It could even be the Phoenicians or otherworldly. Some people say that they were built by aliens, and while I don't think that the aliens built them, hey, they could have helped them. Why not? So, can we find answers to any of this? And the short answer really is resounding maybe. Cross-cultural analysis is very important in this. I do have a background in archaeology and cultural anthropology, although by trade I am a horticulturist and a folklorist. We will get to me in just a moment. But their ecology, examining the plant life, what's been cultivated, looking for whether the microfarms and food forests. Plants, seeing as how I am a horticulturist, can tell you a lot about the area. I'm not going to dive deep into that here and now, but that is something that I don't see a lot of people talking about when it comes to the stone chambers, and seeing things like the age of the trees, such as the 300-year-old sycamore growing out of a stone chamber in Carmel, New York. They chopped the tree down. They didn't kill it. It's still alive. Sycamores are famous for growing right back, and it has. But they cut down the main part of the tree. It was rotting from the inside out. And it's a vet office, so they didn't want it's a Victorian building, too. So, the interest and safety of everyone, they cut it down. And before it started to grow back, I had a chance to look at the tree and count its rings as best I could, and there were about 300 of them. So stuff like that could tell you a story. Introduced plant life, such as woad, the famous Celtic plant used for indigo dye. They say that it was brought over in like the 18th and 19th centuries for dyes, and I don't doubt it. But it's possible it was here earlier. The ancient Celts, particularly the Picts in Scotland, are known for painting their faces with the color, and it does grow in areas where you find the stone chamber. So it is here in North America where it's not native to. So, and then the folklore of the indigenous, including modern personal accounts. And this is, sorry, we transferred this from my computer to this one, so the type is way bigger in a totally different font. So I'm sorry if a little bit goes off the screen. But, you know, a closer examination of the land, of course, is what that says right there. So I apologize for that. But it's mostly intact. And yeah, examining the land. The land can tell you a lot. And just asking the land questions, that will also tell you a lot. So the human element here, not only the natural element, but the human element tells a story. What are the people saying? What have the people been saying? Humans are nothing but stories, so listen to them. If we listen to each other more often, we might find this world to be in a much better place. Ah, that was last year. It's George Whipple. All right. You can't hear it, but you can find it on my TikTok if you do that, or just email me and I'll email you this. We don't need to watch that, but that particular chamber is called the Winter Solstice Chamber. And usually every year I go out to it and watch the sunrise at the winter solstice because many of them do align with the solstice sunrises. So who am I and what credentials do I have to be talking about any of this? Told you we'd get to me. Here I am. I own and operate folklore. And yes, that's me in my Druidic regalia, complete with my face paint. Folklore is a business built upon community, passion, and the stories that we all tell. And I'm a public speaker and educator. My claim to fame is currently both the Stone Chambers and the Druids' Deadly Darlings, which is my beloved and getting to be well-known talk about all things poisonous and proper, begin with poisonous plants. We dive into history and horticulture with a touch of the arcane. And this all is a part of the same entity, the entity being me and my business, because we're one at the moment. I'm a published author. I have my own novel. My photography, the Daniel Nimham Intertribal Powwow, it's published in the New York Times. I studied archaeology and cultural anthropology, a little bit of linguistics and geology too in there at SUNY Potsdam. Varied studies in world religions, and a long storyteller, and all that, and folklorist. And the Keeper of the Stone Chambers by the Boy Scouts that my son is now a part of. They were Cub Scouts then. So yeah, my work and public presentations, they were a catalyst for getting the laws changed in regards to their preservation in Putnam Valley, New York. We are working on the rest of Putnam County and hopefully the rest of the state to start. My work has drawn in many folks and led to an enormous resurgence in this. It's not just me, there are a lot of people working on it too that have been for a very long time. But I've seen an enormous step forward since I joined the scene 15, 16 years ago. So while my opinions are educated, they're just opinions, but you know that now. If there's something that doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to listen to it. You can disregard it. You can think that the colonial root settlers and that's the end of it, and that's totally fine as long as we protect them. I draw from a personal cultural background, which includes my Native American ancestry, of part of which is Algonquin, which are the people who inherited and inherited the land. Which I hail from, and also as a druid. I am a practicing druid. It is my lifestyle. It is what I live by. I'm a woman and a steward of the earth, and so I take that into account as well and use my teachings and that part of my cultural background as references for what I'm looking at when talking about the stone chambers. Does it mean that I wholeheartedly believe that, yes, the Druids built them and that's the answer? I think it's entirely possible, and we're going to go into that. I don't think that's the end-all be-all. Again, I think there's truth in all of it. The stone chambers were most likely built by a number of different people over a very long, and rebuilt over a very long period of time. These are only opinions. So, clearly it's been a lifelong journey to get here, to where I'm standing here right now. That is West Kennet Longbarrow. I know you can't see it with the thing in the middle, or in the bottom there. I took that photo. That's in England. Sure looks like our stone chambers. That's Newgrange in Ireland. There. There's Balanced Rock in North Salem, New York, and I was the tour guide for that. It was a good day. There's Hugh Newman. He's been in Ancient Aliens a number of times. He's a cool guy. He's the leader of that one. And there's Stonehenge. So, you're here for the stories, right? So, we're going to dive into a little bit of a brief history of the chambers. Their folklore, it dates back centuries. Here's one. This is from Connecticut, where we are now. And this is talking about a stone fort, a stone wall in the Pequot Range, Gunjuwant, out by Groton, Mystic. And here you can see, this is from 1654. It's saying there's many strange reports about it. Now, you have to understand some of the terms back then weren't exactly what we say today. So fort, usually they called it like fairy forts, like stone circles. That's what they would call them over in the Celtic Isles, the British Isles. They could have been referring to a stone circle. They could have been referring to a stone fort. It could have been referring to a stone chamber. But most likely fort meant circle. So that's telling us, what that's telling us is that there were earthen rings here. The indigenous are also known for building earthen rings, particularly more in the Midwest, but that, again, putting that out there. So not to jump to any conclusions, that picture right there is of the King's Chamber in Putnam Valley, New York. Very interesting site. Another letter from July 1742 comes from Found Ridge in Westchester County, New York. And it's by a priest in response to an inquiry about a stone chamber all the way back in the 18th century, pre-American Revolution, saying they're very strange, the strange lights, the ghost sightings, and the priest is like, that's the work of the devil. Demons enter the world. See, but entering the world, otherworldly spirits. We have the portals already in the 18th century. And back in the 17th century, clearly. It may, unfortunately, reflect the idea they were built and used by the Algonquin. They thought that my ancestors were the devil too. And it speaks to the consistent reports of these otherworldly happenings. This has been happening the whole time. Nothing new here. Although we have certainly created our own folklore in modern times surrounding the chambers, because these stories persist to this day. They're consistent. And, it supports the suggestion that our beloved stone chambers may have been built as gateways, portals. Now, what is a portal? This is the portal. It's a doorway into another world. Right now, you're viewing my world through a digital format. The stone chambers. Portal's just a doorway, a gateway. So keep that in mind, because anything can technically be a portal. But in this case, we are talking about other dimensions, other realms. So, but how would they have, if they were gateways, how might that have worked? And how would ancient people have worked with these chambers? Now, I do want to just dial it back a little bit and put forth some of the information regarding, just putting it out there. I may have mentioned this like later on in this slide. Forgive me, it's been a while since I've done this presentation. But some of the other ideas is that, yes, they could have been lambing shelters, places where farmers would have brought their lambs to have their sheep to have their babies. They could have been trout smoking structures. They could have been used as wet lodges by the indigenous. They could have been used as colonial root cellars to store root crops. I think that there is definitely a grain of truth in all of that. I do think that they had numerous uses, and we do have names and dates of some of the 18th and 19th century people who built them. So that's certainly a part of the picture there. But I want to share some of my research into something that goes a little bit deeper than that. It really goes into this thing called archaeoacoustics, which is a valid field of study of archaeology. It's absolutely fascinating. And you find these studies at megalithic sites. Chambers being considered megalithic sites the world over. The photo that we have here, actually, to me, last June of 2024, with one of my singing bowls, one of my crystal singing bowls. I am a sound healer. I am a healer in general, and sound healing and vibration is what I do. And that research into that led me right back to the stone chambers, as most things in my life seem to do. So that photo is unedited. Those rings that you're seeing there, that's not lens flare. We don't know what that is, though I can hazard a guess. That blue mist that's there wasn't there with the naked eye. I had been underneath Balanced Rock in North Salem, New York, known as a dolmen. Another anomalous site that's all part of the same thing, playing that singing bowl, this singing bowl, and two crystal singing pyramids that are about 10 inches across. You hit them and they go all gong, like the singing bowls do, except it's a really crazy noise. It's really cool. We had two different ones, two different frequencies. It was me and a friend. And we were over there for an hour, just playing the bowls and stuff. And I saw this nice patch of light. And I said, hey, do you mind taking a picture of me with my nice red bowl? It'll glow, it'll look great, it'll very pretty. Put it on my website and advertise myself. And I knelt down and sat there, and he took that picture, and that's what we got. Those rings, I saw those same rings with my own eyes the first time I ever played this sound bowl at the Mountain Imham Stone Chamber, which is my personal favorite. I didn't know what to make of it. It was the middle of summer, it was humid. I even held my breath to make sure it wasn't condensation. You know, the temperature differences, it's cooler in there. I saw those same rings. And then, like 2 or 3 years later, we get this photo. So that's called cymatics, the study of sound made visible. So we'll get to cymatics in a moment. Sacred sites and resonance. I did say they're portals to resonance, healing, and folklore. So, sacred stone sites, known as megaliths, they are renowned for their resonant properties. Many experiments have been conducted, just documenting the very real effects of sound, music, and resonance within the sanctity of the stones. There's also a lot of research that has been conducted, especially in the last 10, 15 years, on the way that sound and music affects our bodies. Our very thoughts transmit electrical signals. Our bodies are electrical beings. We are piezoelectric, just like quartz is piezoelectric, and we'll get to that in a moment. So they all have a profound effect on us, right? And it's quartz conducts sound and it resonates at very high vibrational frequency. Piezoelectricity means that when in its dormant state, something mechanical hits it. Sound is mechanical energy that once it hits our bodies or something like quartz, transfers into, becomes electrical energy. That's what piezoelectricity means. So when it's hit by an outside mechanical force such as sound, it can generate its own electric field. I probably butchered that, but that's bear with me. Quartz is found within these rocks, which these sacred sites are built. You see that in Stonehenge. Interestingly enough, this bracelet I'm wearing here is made of Preseli bluestone, which is the same knot carved out of Stonehenge, but from the same stones from the quarry where they think those stones were mined. The inner stones in Stonehenge were built. We are going to talk about Stonehenge in just a moment, and one of the experiments that was run there, which shows that those the sound in the inner ring is quite amplified, just as it is inside of sites like these. And whereas the sarsen stones, the big ones on the outside, are made of a different stone, and the energy is completely different, it muffles the sound instead. So, sound, it has a profound impact on our bodies. It has the power to heal. The mechanical energy transforms into electrical energy, like I just said. And I put the science up here so you could see it for yourself. If you'd like to go into this, please, by all means, email me and we can talk about this. I can send you this information. Piezoelectricity. I don't have the time to truly dive into all of this. I would like to tell you some of the stories of the weird stuff that happens at these chambers. But here it is. Just know that they're built of stone with a high concentration of quartz, and many of them do align with solar equinoxes, spring equinox sunrises, winter solstice sunrises. Some of them align with lunar standstills. Like, that only happens like once every few decades, I believe. So yeah, since quartz possesses a high capacity for storing energy and information, it is possible that the solar energy that these sites are collecting, like these solar alignments, where does that energy go? Nowhere. It just stays there. What were they doing with it? I don't know. Generating energy, maybe. It gets stored. The energy is just getting stored. It's just sitting there. So we can think of it like a capacitor. And when music is played within these chambers, and I've done my own archaeoacoustic research, I've conducted sound healings inside of these chambers. That's my favorite one. There's my full set of crystal bowls there, minus the red one that was in that other photo. I didn't have that yet. These stones resonate. I was just on an interview last week where I was recorded doing that, and I used this one, and I used the red bowl, the quartz bowl, to show the difference. And I asked the man who was interviewing me, I said, hey, how do you feel? Do you feel any different? And he said, yes. And that response is consistent all the time, anytime we run that experiment. So is it possible that music and sound could have been used to activate the latent energy that's just stored in there? And can it still be harnessed today? I think the answer to that is yes. That is something I'm still diving deeper into, that it's like a bottomless well. I find it endlessly fascinating. And it's something I don't see a lot of people discussing. So I've made that my focus because there's so much to these stone chambers, and it's a little hard to keep it all on track, so I apologize. So since quartz is a natural amplifier, you can see how this has the potential for profound healing effects. And a lot of people have told me that they healed as a result of getting into and learning about the chambers and the stone walls. One man said he had crippling Lyme's disease, and he thought his life was over. He couldn't even get out of bed. But one day he forced himself to go for a walk in the woods and just followed the stone walls and discovered a couple of stone chambers. And maybe he just found a renewed interest in life, and that alone was able to help him get up and become healthier. But he claims that the chambers, just by being in their presence, helped him. And as somebody who has chronic Lyme's, I feel him, because there are days when I'm in a lot of pain too. So I'm not saying the cures Lyme's disease, they don't. But just being in that energy, with all of that earth surrounding you, being in the majesty of these mysterious structures and wondering what could have been, and stirring your imagination, that alone has the potential to heal, let alone their cool sonic properties. I do. All right. So look, I'm just saying we have measurable data. I'm not going through all of this. Here it is on the screen. Here's the research. But it is measurable. You can see it's not some woo-woo stuff. There's science, I promise. So that brings me to the question of, You know, of the portals. What do we mean when we say the stone chambers are portals? I feel like I missed the slide somewhere. Kind of jumped right to this. Anyway, what do I do? Sorry, I don't get it right all the time. What did I miss here? All right, well, anyway. Getting into the portal lore. Like I said, a portal is just a gateway. It is something that transports you from one space to another. So when you enter these stone chambers, and when you enter these spaces, like let's say somebody is chanting or drumming or playing a sound bowl inside of one of these spaces and bringing this energy up, and you enter that space, or you're sitting there and it's quiet, and then suddenly you're immersed in all of this sound. You've essentially just entered another world. It feels like you've entered another world, and now your body is being transformed. You are being healed in some way, and if you're meditating, right, you're journeying, you might encounter spirit guides, your ancestors. You're going on a journey that's you're not even here anymore. So that could be what is referred to when we say that the chambers contain or are portals. You sit in there and suddenly you're transported away. Maybe not physically, maybe not anymore, maybe once upon a time. But our minds are now in a different state. The alpha versus beta versus delta brain waves in meditation. That's what's happening to us when we work with sound inside of these sites. Many cultures have fertility rituals and seasonal celebrations. They're centered around, Mother Earth and Father Sun, the sun fertilizing the womb of the earth, right? Imbolc being February 1st or 2nd, the midway point between winter and spring, when the stirrings of life start to appear up to the ground. That's a whole other world. That's transformation. And when you're entering these spaces and you're engaging in one of these fertility or sound healing rituals, you are then re-emerging as somebody new, somebody different, in a completely different state of mind and being. So, reconnection with the land. You're reconnecting with yourself by reconnecting with the land. And that may have been what some of these ancient people were doing. Let's say the Algonquin did build them, and some of them say that they did. I've spoken with, one of my elders said that it wasn't the Algonquin. She said it was all the Druids. But another one said that no, it was their ancestors who built these with the help of eastern woodland bison, which are now extinct. I'd like to know how they tamed the bison to do that. But then again, these people were working with the land and the animals every day. They had a completely different way of life. Just like the oxen and the farmers plowing the fields, they were reconnecting with the land in a way that we've lost touch with. So it's this reconnection. These are a whole other world. They really are. Because it's something we've forgotten. And when you enter these spaces, let's say you're just going in there just to sit in the quiet. You're in the dark, you're in the womb of the earth, you're surrounded by quartz, you're surrounded by earth. That quiet introspection time, it can and has had profound healing effects on anyone who chooses to tune in and experience it. And you can do that at home all you want, too. But the chambers are, I think, a lot cooler of a space, and it's certainly perfect for that. So through meditation, we experience a change in consciousness and our physiology. And so in that way, yes, when you emerge from these spaces, you're coming out of another world. Yeah, there you go. When you enter the stone chamber, you're entering another world, a subterranean world, darkness and introspection, touched by the rays of the sun. So yeah, think of it as being planted. When you emerge into the sunlight, your next stage of growth begins after all that introspection. That's why shadow work is important. And reminds me of David Burke's book. He wrote a book called Stone of Knowledge, Seed of Plenty. Gonna have the words reversed. or Seed of Knowledge Stone of Plenty, which talks about the stone chambers in which seeds were stored inside of them. He conducted experiments with that, and the seeds that were like at certain times of the year, and then they were planted, and the ones that had been within these chambers then yielded like twice the crop. So that's another possible use for them. So just in case you're wondering, here's some of the case studies just talking about like West Kent at Long Barrow. That one's in England. It's like a big stone chamber. I went inside of it. The stones are much larger, but they're very interesting. And it's showing the archaeoacoustic properties of this one. It does look a lot like our chambers. And it actually has rooms that are off to the side too. And when you look at some of our larger chambers, such as the King's Chamber, I see the possibility where it may have like originally had rooms off to the side and then perhaps was rebuilt. But we don't know for certain. Nobody's digging in there. I hope not. And then, you see sites like Avebury, the large stone circle world, archaeoacoustics there, Stonehenge. There's me at Stonehenge. I was really there. And this one's interesting because, again, the Betheli bluestone, which contains a lot of quartz, the same thing this bracelet is made out of, is extremely resonant. And so when they're chanting and doing songs with druids, we still gather in there today. And let me tell you, when I went to Stonehenge, I felt like I was home. It welcomed me back, even though I hadn't been there in this lifetime prior to 2012. And then, I hear resonance and frequencies when I pick up stones. And when I hear them, that's why I'm good at doing what I do. When I picked this up, I could hear it, but the woman who sold me, she said, "Oh, I have a bracelet made of the same stones as the sarsen stones, the big ones." And when I held it, the energy was completely muted and muffled, which made sense because what I already knew, considering what I already knew, which was what these studies have shown. Resonant on the inside, very quiet on the outside, hard to hear what's going on, even if somebody's drumming and chanting in there. So, talking a little bit about cymatics here, the study of sound and vibration made visible. I just want to mention it because I did talk a little bit about that photograph that was there and seeing the rings cast out from my singing bowl here. That was wild. I've never really seen anything like that since, and I think that photo was a total fluke, but I think that's my only explanation for what we see there, and as a photographer, I've never seen lens flare like that before. And it looks like the water cymatics, and it looks like what you see, the cup and ring marks that you find in Scotland, and it looks like the swirlies at Newgrange. That's my interpretation of what these were. You don't see those here in our chambers, but you do see them over there in the Celtic Isles. And my interpretation of that is that that's what they were telling us. That's what they were showing us, because clearly we see through archaeoacoustics that that's a big part of these sites and what they were originally used for. And you can see it with sand. It looks a lot like Celtic knotwork, which is very interesting. So, we don't see Celtic knotwork on the chambers. I'm not saying that. But just overall, the study of archaeoacoustics, and then you see how similar these look. Well, comparative cross-cultural references here, these structures look a lot like the ones here, so maybe that's what they were used for too. It would be really cool if we saw stuff like that here, but as far as I know, I don't have any of that. But we do have things that look like Celtic Ogham. But even that's debatable. It's the ancient Celtic written language. Yeah, so there's pictus spirals, water cymatics, etc., etc. Wow, I really went for it with this. Okay. Yeah, so again, they're not present on our stone chambers here, but I've seen it on Mount Nimham and Balanced Rock. And just so you can hear what this sounds like, I will play it briefly. It is a 7-metal bowl, so it makes several different tones because of the different metals that are in it. It has that very deep resonant hum, and I knew the first time I ever picked it up, which is at the Stormville Flea Market. I couldn't put it down. hearing it, I knew. I was like, wait a minute, that's the same feeling, the same tone that I get at the Mountain of Ham Stone Chamber. And I bought it and I went right there and I played it just to see. And I saw like those rings you're seeing there, that's what I saw in front of me. Coming from the bowl, rippling out into the chamber, like out towards the door. I don't know. That's just what I saw. Um, but then to get this, a visual representation a couple of years later at a different site is very cool. So you see some solar alignments, Hawk Rock, these are into Hawk Rock, which is near these two stone chambers in Kent, New York. And that is a Native American site. That has a spring equinox alignment. The sun comes up and illuminates the beak of the giant stone bird. And there's a chamber on Hardscrabble Road, North Salem, New York, which I used to work at Hardscrabble Farms, the nursery that's down there. And I passed that chamber on my way to work early one morning on the first day of spring. And lo and behold, I happened to catch the stone chamber doing exactly what it does, and it looked just like that. Like that's the Mother Earth chamber on the winter solstice. And the sun was aligning. It looked just like that with it. I saw it right from the road. It was really cool. And August 1st, the 301 chamber. One of the 301 chambers, that's Lunasa. That's the ancient Celtic holiday that just passed. The first harvest, got the god, the craftsman, the god of craftsmen, Lu. Big deal to the ancient Celts, to the Druids. I think that one's really cool that it has an August 1st sunrise alignment. It's a cross quarter day, which was held in more significance than even seasons for the cross quarter days. So, what does it mean? It means it's really interesting. That's what it means. Because if you want to get even more weird, that chamber, the one that has the Celtic solar alignment, has modern drill marks in it that are an original part of the chamber. That I believe those drill marks weren't seen until like 1820. But our 18th and 19th century farmer friends also had a preoccupation with the sunrise. And Victorian days, the 19th century, was the heyday of spiritualism. So, they were into this stuff and they were very in tune with their land. So that's something else to keep in mind here. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were built by ancient seafaring European people. But also, my ancestors, the Algonquins, also were very, very in tune with their land. So they could have built it too. So I don't think we're going to get to like all the stories of all the stone chambers because they are innumerable and I've already talked your ear off here. But as you can see, there's a lot of stone chambers, a lot of them. They each have their own stories to tell. Interestingly enough, so we're talking about Groton, Connecticut, Gunji Womp. I do want to tell you an interesting little tale, though, about a stone chamber that was destroyed in Danbury not that long ago, 2 years ago. The last time I gave one of these talks, a gentleman said to me, did you hear about the stone chamber that was destroyed in Danbury? I said, yes, I heard about that one. Don't remind me. And he said, but did you hear about what they discovered while they were destroying it? I said, no. And he said, well, while they were taking it down, they found a root that was sandwiched in between one of the stones, like the big stones, like right in front. And they decided to carbon date the root. It was over 2,000 years old. And the way that when they examined it, they said that there was no way that the root could have grown in, like, after? Like, it had to, the way that the root was in there, it had to have been there, like, when the stones were placed. So it was very, very interesting. So either like a root that was 2,000 years old, just that hadn't decayed, somehow got in between these two stones. Oops, we didn't see that there while we were building it. Or that's when the stones were set. That's all I know about that story. Folklore is like that. Sometimes you get these little snippets, and that's about it. But they're breadcrumbs, and they just paint an even more fascinating and convoluted story. So, yes, getting finally to the good part, the tale of the druid ghost. So this is the 301 chamber. This is the one that has the Lunasa alignment and the weird modern looking drill marks inside of it. Um, but it also allegedly is where a um, quartz like cylinder was pulled out of in the 90s. It was like a little shelf up in the top. And my friend who found it, he left it there out of respect. And he said that when he looked at it, there were like little holes in it that were like drilled into it. And he said that they looked like they made up the constellation of the Pleiades. And then when he went back, a couple months later, it disappeared. Lots of artifacts tend to disappear in regards to the stone chambers. But they're just root cellars, and people keep finding things inside of them, and telling archaeologists about it. Why do they keep disappearing? Why is this such a big deal then? There are 4 stone chambers along Route 301 in Kent, New York. This one's the most famous, easiest to get to. Park across the street, run across Route 301. Please don't get hit by a car. They drive like morons really fast around this turn. Just be careful. So, known for some weird activity. I don't know. I thought I had another slide here. So anyway, the story of this one goes that there was this guy jogging down the road in like the 90s, and he went this way all the time, and he like felt this weird vibe coming from this chamber one day out of nowhere. So he went, okay. And he walked in, and he felt it was like a almost like an electrical charge. I think it felt off. And I felt that off, weird, almost electrical feeling in other chambers too. So I know exactly what he's talking about. And then he said he got like hit in the like struck down by somebody. Somebody like hit him on the back of the head. And he like kind of like got back up, and somebody like threw him down again. When he turned around and looked, there was this druid ghost, is what he's called. It's like this guy wearing like a robe and like a hood and like a big white wizard beard or something. And the guy just like leered down at him and like pointed to the back wall, and then got sucked into the back wall. And that poor guy like never jogged there ever again. He like got himself together and got out of there. And so I've been in this chamber. Clearly, I took that photo of the sunrise last year, and I've had other feelings where like I shouldn't be in there. Other people feel great in there, and that's not all the time. Sometimes I go in there and it's totally fine. It's like very welcoming, very beautiful. But I'm not the only one that's reported that. Sometimes people say, "Yeah, I go in there and I kind of feel like, it doesn't really want me around." The same thing happens at this chamber. This is my favorite one, Mountain Him. It's home to no shortage of folklore. The folklore runs the gambit from like spook lights, those ghost lights off in the woods. That is a real photo. However, I took that. Don't get too excited. That's just me standing in there with the flashlight and a long exposure. I turned it off just in time, and it caught the orb from my flashlight and not me. Um, Unfortunately, I've never caught anything quite so cool at a stone chamber, besides the picture of Balanced Rock, which isn't a stone chamber. So that statement remains. Yeah, so these ghost lights, UFO sightings, time slips, ghost stories, Bigfoot, and like trickster, spirit, and much, much more. Um, I've heard plenty of stories from like the chains rattling in the fields from the old farmer who used to plow, to I've been up there doing like full moon rituals on a nice night. Very quiet, very relaxed, chill. Only to hear wood knocking, which is associated with Bigfoot out in the woods, like something taking a big stick and knocking it against a tree. I've never seen Bigfoot, but I've heard that. I've had that experience for myself. Um, and the chamber has its own folklore. I woke up one night when I spent the night in that thing to see those lights around me all over the place. I never captured them on camera, but I've seen them. I rolled over and said, "Would you please knock it off? I'm trying to sleep," and went back to bed. And I swear to God, I wasn't dreaming. And all these stories, each one is weirder than the last. You start digging into Nimham, Mount Nimham, named after Sachem Daniel Nimham. And it's wild. It's very cool. And the eeriness is the consistency of these stories, of the frequency at which these events occur. And because I have a very strong connection with that land, I've been granted permission. I speak to the land all the time. It's just what I do. I speak with my ancestors, and it's granted me permission to work with it and run my sonic experiments, which, you know, gently and with care given to the spirits involved. Because I don't just do that at any chamber. I feel if you're going to be doing something, even something like playing a singing bowl, ask first. I paint the fire tower. I give thanks back to this land all the time. So I'm very grateful for what it's allowed me to learn from it in exchange. There's visions of the red-haired woman. I've had dreams about her, and I've met other people, completely separate from myself, who've said that they've had visions of this same woman, either at the chamber or a little bit up, kind of near the fire tower, like off the trail, in the woods somewhere. And she's seen at various stages of her life, and she's always described the same. What does it mean? I don't know. The people who reported these don't know each other. They're either strangers I've met or people I haven't seen in years, and we just go for a hike, and I've told them nothing about it. Again, consistency. Bizarre. And there's a chamber on the winter solstice. It lights up that back wall very nicely, and it tapers. It comes in and then it tapers, like, it follows it just like that, and then the sun rises. Comes in at about 8:30, because that's get over the crest of the hill. There's another chamber. There's my son when he was really little. He's 11, about to go into middle school now. That chamber's off the trail, cannot be found except by those who already know where it is, because it faces the opposite way. Yuletide Tales of the Winter Solstice Chamber, aptly named because it does this. It also aligns with the winter solstice. There is another chamber kind of right in front of it, a little down the trail, that's collapsing, known as the equinox chamber. I believe that one has an equinox alignment. And then there's the Mother Earth chamber further down the trail from this one, and that also aligns with the winter solstice. There's Dante again. His birthday is December 22nd, so this is his favorite chamber. King's Chamber, which is enormous. Interestingly, I've heard this chamber called the Queen's Chamber. I'd never heard it called that until like a couple weeks ago. I'm like, which one is that? And they're like, the one from the Mead Farm. And I said, oh, the Winter Solstice Chamber. I guess people just like make up their names for them, and I don't know, call them whatever you want. The King's Chamber just seems that's its name. It's big, it's grand, it's large, it's in charge. Although a feminine presence has been felt, she's kind of a trickster spirit by a lot of people. She stole my keys. She stole my friend's glasses. I can't make this stuff up. Like, these are wild things that just, you have to experience them to believe that they're actually true. This one has a lunar standstill alignment. That is when it's like the moon like stands still, the full moon for like 3 days, and I think it only happens once every 20 years or something like that. I think we just had one like last year, which is weird because I remember that happening 3 years prior. So whether it's the Mandela effect or somebody doesn't have their story straight. And then you see this big standing stone that's in front of it. And then there's stone walls all over the place. There's a smaller one next to it called the tomb, which has a stone shelf at the back, and that's just large enough to hold a human body. Subterranean, quiet presence, all sorts of stories. So this is what's Skin at Long Barrow again, just for comparison. It does look like our stone chambers. I like to compare it to the King's Chamber because the King's Chamber has these like wings off to the side here. And so it has like this stone shelf that's in front of it, and it has the standing stone, which it's debated of whether or not that was actually a standing stone. I like to believe that it was. And the West Kennet Long Barrow does actually have the wings off to the side. The King's Chamber, we can debate whether or not it originally did and was remodeled later on. West Kennet certainly still has those. I've been inside of it. I've seen it for myself. They are there. That one is built with much larger stones than you find in our chambers here, but it is similar enough. And when I was in West Kennet, I felt like I was in the King's Chamber. We did like a little drumming there, and I'm like, am I gonna like walk through the back wall and end up in Putnam Valley? I mean, it'd be a long walk home, but I wouldn't have to pay for airfare. I wasn't playing. I have friends in Pup Valley. Yeah. So, and you can see this one has like some markings. That could just be quartz in the rock. That one kind of looks like it's carved. There's another one along the side on the entrance that looks like the Celtic Eye of Bel, the sun god, which looks like the Egyptian Eye of Horus, the sky god. And there it is from the back, looking out. It's big. It's 35 feet long. This inside of West Kennet. And you see the rooms are like off to the side. And you see rooms like that in America's Stonehenge too, up in New Hampshire. I'm going to in a couple of weeks. I haven't been there since like 2010. And then these interesting markings at the stone along the trail leading to the King's Chamber. And then there's Celtic Ogham. There's the Eye of Horus, but the Celtic Ogham for the god Bellenos underneath. My birthday is May 5th, so it's around Beltane. So that's my honor to my favorite Druid holiday. There's the Boy Scouts. And then we had the story of the obsidian arrowhead and the quartz point. My friend Phil Ambrogno, he found this obsidian arrowhead in the King's Chamber and a quartz point. It disappeared just like the rest of them, just like the brass urn in the Gunji range. That also disappeared. The quartz point, however, has not disappeared. Somebody discovered it in 2011. It is not been dated, but it's in good hands, and it periodically gets to return to where it came from. It's not being kept from its sacred site. It's just being protected. But it doesn't disappear like the rest of them. So there's Phil's dagger, there's the quartz point. There's balanced rock. We already talked about that. The picture I have there, the dolmen. The North Salem Historical Society even considers it a dolmen. Dolmens are built by many cultures, very notably the people of the Celtic Isles, something you would expect to see in Ireland. And these measurements, like the little stones holding the big ones, which those aren't little, by the way. That one's just really, really big. It measures, it's like often equated to the golden ratio. Oh. But the cool thing about this one is that this has a negative magnetic dip. So like a magnetic dip, let's say that the Earth's plane is like flat. You think of like a bed sheet, and then you poke your finger in the bed sheet, and there's a little divot. Well, in a positive magnetic dip, the energy is funneling into the Earth. In a negative magnetic dip, it's coming back out. In balanced rock, it's doing both. And you can, like what I was doing when I was under there with the singing pyramids and the bowls, was I was listening for differences. And there's like a little spit, only a few inches difference. And you can hear a distinct, measurable difference when you play pyramid up here, down here, and then in the middle. That's slight, but it is noticeable, audibly different. And we did that with two different frequencies, 440 and 528. So two different pyramids we used. So that was something very interesting too. Goldilocks and the Freed Beings. I have a friend named Goldie. This is the Mother Earth Chamber, also Winter Solstice alignment, near the Winter Solstice Chamber at Hawk Rock. Well, one night she went for a hike. She'd been there a million times. It's her favorite chamber. This chamber is also called the womb because you go inside and it's very round and comforting feeling, like a beehive style structure, which you also find in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And she said that they passed by where the chamber should be. She'd been there plenty of times in the dark. She likes to go there and like meditate with her friends. Right. I do too. And they passed by it like 5 different times, and it wasn't there. About the 5th time they passed by, and there it was, the same spot they'd been walking back and forth from. The chamber just wasn't there. And I've heard other people say that similar stories where, yeah, like they disappear or they just appear. And then, they stayed not as long as they usually do because they were like, are you feeling a little weird? Yeah, me too. Let's leave. So they were headed back to the trail and they saw this glowing like light off in the woods. And it was like a portal, like an opening into another world. And in through this light, they saw like these three beings. And they were like huddled around like they were chanting or something, like robed figures. And they didn't want to get too close. The beings didn't seem to notice them. They were lost in their own world. So they were like, you know what? Let's just keep walking. So that's her story. I wish we. Is there a way we can like raise the speakers so you can hear the EVP captured at this chamber? Same chamber. Yeah, but it was low. More. No. I. We can. Oh, oh, you know why? Probably because I have the file on my computer. That's all right. Whatever. Doesn't. It says Avius me Dirdana, which is Gothic Latin for one who flies, meaning one who flies from the center of the goddess. Dana sounded closer to the Danu, which is the earth goddess in Celtic belief system. Interesting. And Hooded Beings, it's a classic story of the stone chambers and similar surrounding sites. Hooded beings, like robed dark figures appearing at or nearby a chamber, usually at night, not always. Ominous presence, feelings of dread, since you've seen something you shouldn't have, like Goldie and the Three Beings. That's me. I think that some of the stories, probably most of the modern ones up on Mount Nimham, are just me. I'm the local cryptid up there. Actually, that photo is now in an art installation. That's cool. My friend just entered that photo, the photographer. So, yeah. Hawk Walk has its own stories. The Native American sacred site, the spring equinox alignment, and there's stories. Bill and Brogno, the author I was just talking about, had a camp out there in like 2008 where everybody saw like this mysterious thing fly over them and weird eyes looking at them in the woods. There were like a dozen witnesses to this happening and bizarre sounds that one guy has convinced himself is a barn owl, but everybody else who was there goes, no, we don't know what that was. Owls do make strange calls, and so do foxes and other nocturnal creatures, and so do ravens. They can imitate human speech. And I've heard ravens at like 10:30 at night up on Nidham. So it could have been any of that. We don't know what it was. And you can see, sorry, we're like running along here. I'll try to hurry up. And it's called Turtle Walk too, because it's got the turtle petroglyph. There's a long-tailed bird and an effigy of the sun. I know it's hard to see with the light on. Gunji Walk, bless you. On Connecticut. Lots of interesting stories about this site. Chamber stone walls, stone spiral. Again, with those sites, it even has like these little windows, and you see that at the King's Chamber too. And you see them a lot in Celtic structures. One of the King's Chambers right in the front as opposed to inside the chamber. With these sites, the ones that are very well maintained, such as Gunjuwap and America Stonehenge, one thing we do have to keep in mind is how much was reconstructed over time and how much is original. America Stonehenge, I know that's the debate. But this one is very cool. If you get a chance, definitely check it out. I'm very happy to be revisiting this site. I was just on a podcast actually. It was like back-to-back interviews, me and Dennis Stone, the guy who runs America Stonehenge, talking about these sites. And it's the biggest piece of evidence, I think, that we have these chambers could defy our conventional explanation of, oh, they were just root cellars. But again, how much was reconstructed? He's done a magnificent job of, I think, promoting this history. It's a cool site. So the sacrificial table, yeah, it's got like these grooves in the rock. That tells you everything you need to know right there, I think. I'm just saying. We did have bogs around here. We did have bogs a long time ago. Our soil is acidic, and I see there's a space in Mount Nimham where the bog is reforming. It's like a little puddle, but I'm like, that's turning back into a bog because that's what it used to be. And there's actually peatlands all over the place. There's a bog in Connecticut, a legit bog. It's their own specific type of wetland, different from a fen, different from a swamp, different from a marsh. Special interest of mine. Clearly. But we did have them here, and peat, which is found in bogs, was actually mined on Mount Nimham. I found that out through like a geological survey completely by accident, and I went, I knew there were bogs. So, you have druids and potentially and definitely bogs. Maybe we could find a bog body, but the bog is now a pond, so probably not. There's the inside. You see the Oracle Chamber, the biggest one. It has other rooms and stuff. America Stonehenge. All right, Lockwood Lane. There's a lot of them. There's my son who was a baby. Whole complex, lots of stone chambers that defy explanation. You got this thing, a chair that looks like what I think could have been its own sacrificial table. Yeah, that was a glacial erratic, but they also have like carved grooves in the stone over here, like a carved out porch channel. And that chair and that first chamber there look directly out at this thing. There's a whole bunch of other ones there. So what does it all mean? Were the chambers built by druids? We don't know. We have no idea. I'm just the local cryptid that haunts them in my robes at night in a place full of story of creepy robed hooded beings and stone chambers and portals. So yeah, we don't really know what it all means, but I think that people's stories are the most interesting part of it. And I think that there is a large body of evidence that suggests they could be something definitely more than, oh, it's just a root cellar. I think that they were used as root cellars. I think they could have been used as lambing shelters, as trout smoking things, as indigenous structures to honor the land, to have sweat lodges, to honor their ancestors. I asked my ancestors, and the answer I got was, yes, we did use them. We rebuilt many of them, but there was a time when they were not built by us. And before that time, there were people before who built those, even before we came down to this land and became who we are today, and who they were before the colonists got here. So you can certainly always ask the land if you have any questions. The land will always tell you. If you want to know how to do that, you may contact me. I give classes in just such things, sound healings and more. These are my sacred spaces, my humble home in the land of, yes, my ancestors, and I'm sure some of yours. So no matter what their origins or age, they are all extremely worthy of preservation and further research. And there is absolutely a body of truth in all of it. From Stonehenge to Mount Nimham. The mystery continues, and so does my research. Mount Nimham on Ostara, King's Chamber on Samhain, and balanced rock with its resonant properties. And my son, Dante Galileo, the protector of the stone chambers, which my legacy is going to become his problem someday. He already knows it. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I forgot about the dowsing rods. They do work at the chambers. I made these. I make them. I sell them. I have fun with them. And they do the crossy thing and the opening thing at the chambers. So ley lines, magnetic anomalies, water under the ground, probably all the above. Questions? Comments? Theories on life or the chambers? Yes. No, but I think I've heard about it. What do you know about that site? Isn't that amazing? And it's like, how did they get it up there? I mean, there's a guy out in like the Midwest who built his own Stonehenge to scale. It's smaller, but he did it using like pulleys and levers and stuff. And he was like, you know, if I can do this all by myself, you scale this up and you get a bunch of other guys, which is bigger tools, they could have easily done it. So they certainly had the tools to do that kind of stuff, but they also have had resonance and ways of working with the earth. And I think it's entirely possible that, hey, maybe they found ways to lift the stones using only sound. Yes. At, at America's Stonehenge, it says that it is an archaeological site, and they have a little museum where they have some interesting artifacts that were allegedly found there. Um, the consistency lies in some of um, like some of the artifacts that were found like at the King's Chamber. You see that black obsidian arrowhead, which was dated. Somebody twisted Phil's arm into letting the officials have it, and he curiosity won. You know, he dated it to around 2,000 years old. It was made of Icelandic obsidian, and then and of course it disappeared after that. Never got it back until it resurfaced a few years ago at a talk in New Hampshire, and the archaeologist was very dodgy about that subject, and the trail went cold after a friend of mine kind of harassed the guy, but I understand he was very interested in knowing more, knowing full well what he probably had and who it really belonged to. Um, and then you have that quartz point, like that is, I would say, it was found within the same chamber in 2011. That's something that's consistent. But those weren't official archaeological digs. Um, there has been radiocarbon dating of like pieces of charcoal that have been found in the chambers, just like the root that was found in between the stones in Danbury. And you see a lot of these dates being around that 2,000 year mark. So that's very interesting. Um, it can tell us when these things may have been used. It doesn't, well, the root being in between the stones when it was set, being 2,000 years old, it can give you a good indication of perhaps that's when it was built, whether you want to believe that or not. But other pieces found inside of them that are around that same age, you get that consistent date. And that's extremely interesting. And in archaeology, they would probably, you know, if they were doing their job right, be like, oh, well, we have a good date here. Maybe we should look into that. But it typically gets swept under the rugs when it comes to the stone chambers. And that's the same age as the Icelandic point, right? So then you have ground penetrating radar that was done inside of the King's Chamber in the 90s. And you know, that wasn't digging. I keep hoping that we'll get some official archaeological excavation, but then that's like a double-edged sword because when they get involved, well, it's very interesting, and I want to know more, and I want to see the official record. I don't want to see amateur hour. I don't want people destroying them. But that's when things tend to get lost, and things do get swept under the rug. And then you might find that, oh, suddenly these are off limits, and you can't visit them anymore, because that's how this stuff often works. So, but then we can be doing something maybe more about their preservation. But when the ground penetrating radar was done in the King's Chamber, it revealed a like 3 by 5 foot like chamber in like underneath, like a little cutout underneath the stone chamber. And when I poke on that area inside of that chamber, it goes dunk, dunk, dunk. My staff, my walking stick, it's hollow. So there's some consistency, and there's some other stuff too that lends credit to that consistency, but nothing that's like concrete, like on the official record. At least not that anybody's talking about like in the open. The same thing happens at Nineveh, by the way. Sorry, the same thing happens with the hollow sound underneath. Dunk, dunk, dunk. There's something under there too, but Please don't quit digging in the chambers. You had another question, I'm sorry. Yes, on some of them there is a doorway that was like added on later. And like on you can see very clearly that that doorway is a lot more modern. It's different. There's concrete. You could see evidence there was a door. The chamber that's not a real chamber, looks like one that's in the parking lot, was used in the 1940s as an ammunition bunker. It was built during the 1940s, and then may have also been the time when that stone chamber had a door. That place was also a farm. It was called Pine View Farm. That chamber may have been used to store root crops at some point. Yeah, so yes, we definitely have that. And if you go like the middle branch of that office where the sycamore tree is growing out of the stone chamber, which the tree is 300 years old, which means that the chamber was there first, right? It's a lot older than 300 years. That one also has a door on it. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. Yep, I love Outlander. It makes me think of the chambers all the time. Um, there are stories like that, and there are disappearances that have happened in the woods near these chambers. Mount Nimham, that's my favorite place, right? That's my sacred space. I'm the mountains druid. I was the record keeper for my powwow that was up there, right? So I know all of its folklore, not all of it. There's a story of a disappearing hiker from 1968. There's police reports of it. And there's people that have experienced like time slips on the reservoirs around like the frozen reservoirs, in the winter around these times. There's people that have missing time and even abductions and like weird stuff like that. So there are stories like that. Has anybody like walked through one of these back walls and ended up somewhere else? Not to my knowledge, but I'm not saying it doesn't happen because let me tell you, there have been times when I go in there and I'm just doing my thing with my singing bowls or whatnot, and the energy gets very, very, very intense. And I'm playing with frequencies in a place where there's portal lore, and I've had a couple of experiences where, while I didn't go into another realm, I'm not saying I wouldn't have. Uh, so I think that's possible. I would definitely like to hear if anybody like on Zoom or something is like listening and they've gone through a portal into another world inside of one of these stone chambers. Please tell me. I'm completely accessible and I want to hear your tale. Any other questions or comments or theories? You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. Amanda's here. She helped me. She is my soul sister. Probably dates back to the days of the stone chambers. One of the days of the stone chambers, whatever that is. And there is an old well that is near. Yes, I told you I'd forget about the well.
Well, that's almost directly across from where the stone chamber is on Mount Nenham, and it is under an oak tree. And the Celts and Nordic culture, and just generally British, Irish, Scottish folklore, oak trees are probably the most sacred tree. So I just thought that was pretty like further evidence to look for the theory that it is Celtic or even pre-Celtic. And also because the Celts are nomadic people, so they were known for traveling all over the place and coming from all different places. They just stayed in the British Isles the longest.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Thank you. And yeah, when I showed you that little well that's there, I'd known that well was there for many years. And I had my opinion, my thought, my gut feeling was that this looks like one of the Irish fairy wells. But I was like, well, maybe it was just colonial. And like, you took one look at it, you were like, is that like an Irish fairy well? I'm like, maybe. So I want to thank you for mentioning that, because it, like I said, they're breadcrumbs that come from all places, from friends and strangers alike, and it just adds to this mystery. And so no matter what you want to believe on their origins and age and whatnot, these things are here. The weird stories are what people keep people coming back for more. And if you would like to visit them, I do give tours. They are by donation. And just, if you're visiting them by yourself or with me, just use respect, because they deserve nothing less than our respect and our wonder. Thank you.